In this episode, we're going to discuss backups for DJs.
Holy Grail.
Welcome back. So in this particular episode, we're going to talk about something that might not seem very exciting to lots of DJs out there, but I can tell you as an IT professional that if you haven't thought about it, it's worth taking the 5 minutes the video is going to take to go through to make sure that you got your bases covered for your backups. So one, this should be really obvious. Backups are really important. Why? Well, specifically for DJs, you can spend, hundreds and thousands of dollars to get the files themselves. So it can be a real pain in the butt trying to recover those files if you don't get them, if you don't back them up. And in some cases, if you're in a DJ pool, you can't get those files back. So that's one. This is really the big one for me. It's the time spent getting the music ready to play. I probably spend more time actually getting music ready to play, getting the songs ready to play than I actually do DJing. It's literally hundreds of hours to get, all of the music ready to play. So if you don't have good backups, and honestly, even, with me doing this video, there have been a couple of times where I wasn't backing up properly, and I did, waste several hours of, trying to recover files and music that I wasn't actually able to get. So, and you can't get that time back. So the time spent getting music ready to play is another critical reason for making sure that you have really good, solid backups. And then the other thing is that you can recover from mess ups. What do I mean by mess ups? Well, let's say, for example, I get a virus on my computer, which destroys my computer or destroys a portion of my computer. Maybe I can figure out, well, hey, I downloaded something, 3 days ago, and so I need to be able to go back maybe to the 4th day or week ago and reinstall my computer from that time period without having to reinstall, all my apps from scratch. So yes, this should be really obvious. Backups are really important, but I can tell you, again, as an IT professional, that so many people don't do anything as it relates to backups. And it's heartbreaking when you have to tell somebody that you can't get their file back or you can't get their computer back. And then, of course, it's like, well, I wish I'd been backing up. So what are the rules for backup? I think there are two primary ones. One, backups require a minimum of 3 copies. And when I say 3 copies, I'm not including the original copy. So if you have the file and you download it, then you need to have a minimum of 3 copies someplace else. Not on your computer, ideally. And then you can consider, I got the first part of the backup rule taken care of. Minimum of 3 copies. Then the second rule is that one set of backups are required to be off-site. And when I say off-site, I mean not in your house. I mean, it's fantastic, for example, that you bought 3 different hard drives and you got them all plugged into your computer, and that they automatically, as soon as you download new music and you get it all formatted the way you want, that it automatically backs up to these 3 hard drives. That's fantastic. But what happens if, a thief comes and steals all your computer equipment, or your house, unfortunately burns up, or something along those lines? Well, that's fantastic. You met the requirement for the first rule, which is you had a minimum of 3 copies, but you had them all in the same place, so that doesn't really help you. So one set of backups are required to be offsite, and slash, I'll put a slash on it, in the cloud. That's probably going to be the easiest. If you didn't want to do that, it could be at a friend's house or relative's house or something like that. So I have multiple backups configured on my computer. And so we'll go through, there's 4 different types. The first one is automated cloud backup. So you'll see on the left-hand side, there's something called Crash Plan. Crash Plan is a system that you set up. It's $15 a month, and it will back up. It's unlimited essentially in terms of storage space. I think I currently have maybe 5 terabytes, worth of data stored up in Crash Plan. And the, main reason for that is I have a lot of music, but also I'm a photographer, and so I have terabytes of stuff for pictures, 12 or 13 years worth of photographs and stuff. So that's pretty large. But for $15 a month, it really doesn't make any difference. It backs up all 3 of my primary computers, which is included in part of the plan. And it's automated. So every time I download a new file, it automatically will sync that back up to Crash Plan, which is nice. So what's the negative on this one? Restoring files is a bit of a pain in the butt. If you have to restore 1 or 2 files, it's not that bad. But if you had to restore like 100 files in this situation, it's really painfully, really slow. There are size restrictions in terms of how much you can restore all at once. I think there's a restriction on the number of files you can download all at once. Now, what they will do, so let's say, for example, I'll use the example that, my house caught on fire and I lost my computer and I lost all my hard drives. With Crash Plan, you can call them. They will, as opposed to downloading all your files, they'll, for a fee, which I think is roughly $150, they will send you a drive and you can restore all your files using that. And I've used that in the past, and so I know that works. So here's one way: automatic cloud backup. Yes, it's $15 a month. However, it backs up all of my computers, and it's something I don't have to think about. It automatically backs up everything, without me having to say, okay, well, I want you to back up these particular files. If something new comes, it just backs it up. And it's offsite. So that's a big major requirement covered, and that's one backup. Okay, so let's say, for example, you didn't want to use Crash Plan, you didn't want to spend the $15 a month. Are there some other options? Of course. You could use something like a Dropbox, a Microsoft OneDrive, or a Google Drive, and configure those for automated cloud backup. So you basically say, okay, here's the folder that I want to be my synced folder. And you can put all of your music in that particular folder, and it'll automatically sync it up to the cloud. And all of these are initially free. If you go create a Outlook account in Microsoft, you'll get a certain amount of space for OneDrive. I think with Dropbox out of the box, so to speak, I think you get something like 100 gigs. I don't remember how big the Google Drive one is to start with. But these are all initially free. In my case, because I have a half a terabyte of just music by itself, none of these options really work for me. I could do maybe a portion of my music, but if you're just getting started and you don't have a whole lot of music yet, then these would be really good. They sync automatically. So for example, if you have a desktop and you do all your setup on the desktop and you have Dropbox installed on your laptop, then you can have it set up so that it automatically will sync to your laptop without you having to do anything. Again, the one caveat to Dropbox, OneDrive, and Google Drive is that the space is somewhat limited to get started. Next kind of backup is computer imaging. Computer imaging essentially allows you to restore your computer to its in-use condition, meaning that right now I'm recording on an iMac and I use Time Machine. So if my hard drive died on my computer, I literally could put in a new computer, or a new hard drive, excuse me, and I could restore it exactly to this point. So I wouldn't have to go and reinstall the OS, then reinstall all my applications, then find all of my data. It's all included as part of this backup. So both Microsoft and Apple have different methods for doing it. Apple uses Time Machine. And I'm just going to tell you, for imaging purposes, again, Time Machine is one of those things that you turn it on and you tell it which drive you want the Time Machine to be, and that's it. Again, every time you make some changes, it'll automatically back this up. The one cool thing for Time Machine is it takes snapshots. So, again, if I use the virus scenario, I got a virus. I think I got it 2 days ago downloading something stupid. I want to go back a week and restore my computer from a week ago. I can go in a Time Machine and say, hey, what's the nearest backup I have from a week ago? Oh, there it is. Pick that one and do the restore from there. And that's wonderful, and it works great and it's super simple. On the Microsoft side, it's a bit more work. They do have backup included with, I'm using Windows 10. I do not have this automated on any of my Microsoft laptops, or that's all I have. So, and it's really a bit more of a pain in the butt to use. But if you have, Windows PC, it's out there. So that's computer imaging. That's the second thing that I have. Third is file level backups. Now, file level backups are basically copying the individual songs themselves to some sort of external drive. In this case, it could be a flash drive, an external drive, or an SD card. And again, for both Windows and Apple, you can simply do something as simple as copy and paste, and copy all of your music on. The problem with that is there's no logic included in it. So, for example, if you had newer files on your flash drive or your external hard drive, it'll manually stop you every time to say, okay, well, do you really want to overwrite this file? Do you want to overwrite? Or the settings are all kind of global. Do you want to skip everything? Then you'll skip everything. So I don't typically, unless I'm in some massive rush, I don't typically use copy and paste out of the box. One of my favorite utilities, and it's free, is something called Free File Sync. And essentially, Free File Sync works for Windows, it works for Macintosh, There's a Linux client. So you basically say, okay, here's the directory that I want to back up, and here's where I want to copy that information to, and you can put some logic in. You can say, I only want to copy over new files. It can do that. It can actually look in both directories and say, okay, well, which one is the newer file? Okay, well, then I'll just copy the newer one, regardless of which side of the equation, whether it's on the external hard drive or on your computer. It can do that. If anybody has any real interest in this, I can do a video just on how to set up free file sync to get it work properly. But that's typically what I use to back up my files, my individual files, to like an external hard drive or a flash drive. You'll notice on the right hand side too, there's something called real-time sync, which is a version of free file sync that works in real time. So as opposed to manually going into free file sync and saying, okay, I want to copy from one location to another, it automatically looks at, has a watch folder, and it says, okay, if there's a change in the watch folder, then copy this file automatically to someplace else. And that's real-time sync. So then that's kind of an automated process where once you get it set up, then you don't have to do anything. So I use real-time sync sometimes too. I did want to point out, which is why you see pictures of a flash drive on the left and an external hard drive on the right. One of the larger flash drives that you can get is a 512 gig flash drive, which you can see here is $179, which is actually a pretty good price, versus on the right hand side, which is an external 5 terabyte external hard drive, which is only $120. So you get 10 times the amount of storage space using an external hard drive. Of course, the negative to that is it's huge, right? Or a lot larger than a flash drive or an SD card. So just something to factor in. But even at $180, considering the amount of time that you put in and how much the files cost, it's worth getting. If you had to get that 512 flash drive or whatever, and that's what you wanted to use, it's worth it. Okay, and then the last type of backup I have is I've called it redundant backup. But really it's more fault tolerant than redundant. So at home, the last place I have my individual files stored is on the network attached storage device. So in the picture, you can see it's a QNAP and it has 5 drives. And so in this particular case, with an external hard drive, if you drop it or it gets wet, then you've lost all your data. Same thing with a flash drive. You might be able to drop a flash drive, but if it got wet or somebody stepped on it, then you've completely lost your data, and that's one of your copies. One of the nice things about this network attached storage is that if I lost the drive, then everything still works. It'd be a little bit slower, but everything would still function. So in this case, I'd still have the opportunity to, take out the drive, go get another one, put it back in, and everything works fine. So in this particular setup, I can afford to lose a drive and still not lose all of my data. So this is the last place that all of my files go. And that's essentially it. This is, by the way, is obviously can be really expensive. Just the case alone can be anywhere from $300 to $500. Then you have to buy, hard drives, which are roughly, $100. So this can get very pricey pretty quickly. That said, you can make a 5 terabyte NAS by getting an enclosure that allows for 2 drives. And again, if you lose a drive, you still have your other 5 terabyte drive. So in that particular case, you're only looking at $250 for the drives and maybe $300 for the enclosure. Anyway, that's redundant, what I'll call redundant backup. And I have all of these things in place. So, in conclusion, if we're looking at the backup summary, we've got a couple of rules, right? Minimally, rule number 1, minimally you need 3 physical copies outside of the song itself or the file itself. You need some sort of cloud or off-site backup. I use CrashPlan, which is fantastic. We've talked about the pluses and minuses of that. If you don't want to spend the money and you don't have a lot of data, you can use something like Dropbox, Google Drive, or OneDrive for Microsoft. Another type of backup would be computer imaging, which again, if you have a Mac, it's as simple as plugging in a drive and saying, okay, I want you to be the backup drive or the time machine, and you call it a day. On the Microsoft side, you can do it, but it's a little bit more work. Then the next level of backup is file level backup, which is basically copying and pasting files from one place to another. And then lastly, we have redundant backup, which is basically backing up to some sort of device that has fault tolerance built in, meaning that I can, lose a hard drive in that particular case and still, have everything up and running. So if you do not have backup or a backup strategy or plan, please, 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 I can't say that enough, please take action today to make sure that you're backing up your computer. As always, thanks for listening. If you have any particular questions on this, then please leave a comment. If you found any value in it, then give it a like. And as always, subscribe, and more great content coming your way. Cheers.